Hello everyone, it's Jin'taan here, and today we're going to be going over the third release in the Fight or Flight quadrant, which went live on the 11th of February 2020, which is titled From Wormholes with Love. The main notable changes released in this patch were the addition of new wandering connections in wormholes, as well as an increase to their general spawn rate, changes to wormhole PvE including adding scrams to sleeper sites, and nerfing the ability to farm drifters with Astra houses, the addition of shield slaves or nirvanas to the normal distribution methods via Sancha loot drops and LP stores, moving slave implants, now known as amulet implants, to Blood Raider loot drops and LP stores, the introduction of new remote repair bonusing implants to the game called Saviors, tier side of remote capacitor transfers, a rework of ore distribution in belts and Sov anomalies, and an update to the inventory, hypernet and redeem items UI. Oh, and preparations for a new PvE event that starts on February the 13th. So yeah, this is a meaty patch. One thing I'd like to thank CCP for before we get into reading the notes though, is that right now it looks like all of the changes that have been made are listed and explained in some level of detail, which is something I've been asking for a long time. I think this will go some way to helping reduce the informational disparity between large and small organisations, which is always positive in my eyes. Alright, let's dive into this, starting with the changes listed under the exploration header. Wandering wormhole connections, excluding those to Thera and Shattered wormholes, have had their presence increased. Wandering C5 and C6 connections to Nullsec have had their presence increased, and new wandering connections between C4, C5 and C6 wormholes have been introduced. Whilst I don't have the stats in front of me to know how much this is actually going to increase the connectivity of wormholes, and as someone who isn't a wormholer, this isn't something that's in my realm of expertise, what this does seem like is a way to make it a lot more difficult to create safe spaces in wormholes where you can PvE. And it will also probably benefit PvP groups in a wider sense by increasing the chances of them connecting to another PvP group to participate in a fight against one another. If there are any wormhole players listening, please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below, as I'm interested to see what your take is on this change. Moving on to the implants header, Nirvana implant blueprints have been added to the Sancha loyalty point store and loot tables. Amulet implants have been added to the Blood Raider loyalty store and loot tables, and the new Savior implant set has been introduced. This implant set reduces the cycle time of subcapital remote shield and armor repair modules, and blueprints for these implants will initially become available through the upcoming Guardians Gala VIP venues, which will become available on February the 13th. Next, under the modules header, we have the tier side of the remote capacitor transfers. As usual, I'm not going to give you the gory details of what meta module was changed into what new meta module, but here are the basics. Whereas previously we had 5 different variants for each size of remote capacitor transfer, including Tech 1 Basic and then Metas 1 through 4, now this has been simplified to only 3, with the Tech 1 variant, the Scoped variant, and the Compact variant. Overall, these changes have mostly balanced out. However, the new Compact variant is significantly easier to fit than even the Meta 4 was before this patch, with the new Compact Large Remote Capacitor Transfer only taking up 288 power grid, whereas the Meta 4 one took up 320. This will likely be a buff to cap chaining logistics such as the Guardian, Osprey and Basilisk, as it will probably enable them to fit a greater tank than they could previously. Alongside this, there was also a buff to the storyline remote capacitor transfers to keep their fitting requirements below that of these new compact variants. Under the Miscellaneous tab, changes to the qualification rules for Sancha incursion rewards have been made. In order to qualify for the rewards, pilots must be present at the site upon completion and also have a meaningful contribution to the completion of the site. I have seen some anecdotal reports that this is currently bugged, but I would expect that to be addressed with a hotfix in the near future, if it is indeed the case. Next, under the Missions and NPCs header, we have the aforementioned wormhole PvE changes, with the behaviours of drifter response battleships being updated, and the sleeper warp scramblers being updated in order to be able to shut off micro jump drives. Following on from this, under the user interface heading, we have a lot of changes. Introducing a new system to track new items in the inventory, hangars, and Plex Vault via icon badging, UI breadcrumbs, and tooltips. Plex is placed in the Plex Vault instead of item hanger when obtained via redeem, market, trade, contracts, etc. Number entry fields will now automatically include 1000 separators, e.g. 2 commas in 1 million, rather than presenting it as one block of 100000. In the past, having these fields not format for easy readability has caused a significant amount of headaches for pilots and the player experience team. This change will hopefully make number fields much more readable and less prone to errors. So no more listing your damage control for 845 million ISK by accident. Adjustments have been made to the crate opening flow, moved Neocom items for the redeem window, contextual offers, and daily login rewards to the Neocom tray, unified naming of the redemption queue in text references to redeem items, overhaul of the redeem queue UI, tooltip now shows the notes for bookmarks, corporation bulletins can now be rearranged, daily login incentive window now has sound, logoff window now includes daily reward reminder, added a link icon next to the current fit name in the fitting window. New UI elements in the buff bar above the ship HUD will now clearly display the impact of in-system wide effects on your ship. These icons will appear when your ship is affected by Wormhole system effects, Sancha incursion system effects, Triglavian invasion system effects, and Triglavian stellar accelerator system effects. Under the Hypernet heading, you can now see a list of the capsuleers who own the highest number of hypernodes in an offer when looking at the offer details view. Filtering has received a number of improvements. You can now filter by meta item groups. Blueprint copies versus originals and item categories have been added to the item field. Filter settings can now be saved, and you are no longer forced to select a range for the hypernode count field. You can now filter on offers with a single specified number of hypernodes. The history view has vastly improved filtering. You can filter by all the same criteria as in the browse view, along with filtering on joined versus creative, active versus finished, and public versus private offers. Sorting options were also added. When a filter is applied to the history view, you can now see how many total offers there are and how many the filter criteria applies to. You will now see a warning on offers that have a disproportionately high hypernode price compared to the item's average price on the regional market. This warning, along with the indicator for low-priced hypernodes, can now also be seen in the offer details view. You can now see how many hypernodes you own, along with the total number of hypernodes in an offer when it is finished and being synchronized. You will now be warned if you set a very low hypernode price compared to the regional market estimate when creating an offer. Your history will now show you all the offers you've participated in or created in the last 3 months, and offers with blueprints will now say in the title whether they are an original blueprint or a copy. Following on from this, under the universe heading, we have the ore distribution changes which I mentioned in the introduction. The following adjustments have been made to asteroids throughout the universe of New Eden. High-sec asteroids. Pyroxes, Omber, and Kernite quantities have been reduced. Low-sec asteroids. Veldspar, Scordite, Pyroxes, Plagioclase, Jasper, Homorphite, and Hebegite quantities have been reduced. Null-sec asteroids. Scordite, Omber, Kernite, Jasper, Homorphite, Hebegite, Gneiss, Dark Ochre, Crocite, and Arcanor quantities have been reduced, and Bistock quantity has been increased, and ore anomalies spawned from Sovereignty Industry Index upgrades have been changed in the following ways. Level 1, 2, and 3 respawn times have been adjusted. All variations of Crocite in all levels have been replaced with the equivalent yield variation of Kernite. Gneiss, Dark Ochre, and Spodumene quantities have been reduced. The overall impact of this, from what I can gauge right now, beyond just reducing the actual quantity of ore that's available to mine basically everywhere in the game, is that this drastically changes the mineral composition of the asteroid fields in all of the affected areas. This will make industry inside specific security statuses a little less self-sufficient, which may mean that nullsec needs to import more minerals than before, specifically low ends, as spodumene and gneiss were one of the key providers of that to the nullsec industrial complex. However, without changes to athanors and how they produce effectively infinite amounts of ore, it's unlikely that this will change the economic picture greatly, at least in my opinion right now, but we will have to see how this plays out. And that concludes the major gameplay changes that have been introduced in this patch. But as always, let's move on to defect fixes and look at what bugs have been squashed over the past couple of weeks. First up, under the gameplay heading, fixed a problem which sometimes caused all modules to be offlined on ships in upwell structures, fixed an issue where the assets of biomassed characters would not correctly transfer to their corporation. Next, under the graphics and audio heading, fixed a post-processing issue on the smaller asteroids when a larger one was occluding the sun, fixed an animation issue on the Damavix core VFX whilst warping, scaled smart bomb visuals to their area of effect, reduced the ambient ship SFX for the Triglavian frigate Nurgle, adjusted God Ray intensity and colours according to the system stars, fixed an issue that caused some sound effects to be unaffected by the sliders, modified sunlight occlusion by asteroids, corrected switching between dynamic and classical music with classical Eve music enabled, adjusted speech audio levels for all languages, fixed an issue that allowed boosting SFX to be heard when all advanced audio settings were muted, added warp animation sounds for the Galante frigates Maulus, Keres, Tristan and Utu, added warp animation sounds for the Galante battleship Dominix and the battlecruiser Talos and destroyer Magus, and adjusted the transparency of Mimitar solar sails on gates, structures, deployables and some ships. Under the market header, Zoria officer module blueprints no longer have market entries, and improved the searchability of Triglavian ores on the market. Under the PvE heading, enemies in the tutorial now show the correct resistances in their show info windows. Under text descriptions, various text, grammar and punctuation fixes have been added. And finally, under the user interface heading, fixed an issue where the item and solar system filter fields in the HyperNet relay were not displayed correctly with UI scaling enabled, fixed an issue where the number of joined offers in the history view in the HyperNet relay would sometimes be incorrect, fixed an issue where the default price for blueprint copies was based on the market price of the original when creating an offer in the HyperNet relay, Aura's conversation windows no longer animate their exit animations even when the window is minimized, the ship tree window is now correctly reset when using the reset to default window position option, fixed an issue where clicking a bill issued notification in the notification feed would break the wallet window if it was already open, switching inventory tabs with a highlighted search item now correctly clears the highlight, pasting a number with decimal places into a field that only accepts whole numbers will now correctly round the number to the nearest whole rather than removing the decimal separator. The reprocessing window has had the opacity of its skill bonuses in the tooltip for reprocessing ores adjusted. Fixed an issue where unrenting a corporate office didn't remove items from the open reprocessing window. Personal Assets Search tab help icon is now consistent with other help icons. The ship warp speed column now shows in the compare tool when only show attributes that differ flag is enabled for ships that have different warp speeds. Fixed an issue with forward and back buttons in info windows. Fixed an issue where distance to an object would disappear when at 0 meters. Agent level now has a tooltip in the agency. The golden capsule is now filtered out of the skins list. Fixed an alignment issue for resources in the agency. Fixed an issue where agency damage boosters would show multiple bonuses in the pop-up. Fixed an issue where position indicator would remain visible when the same position was selected in the overview settings window. Fixed an issue where it was possible to select unavailable sections in the agency when in Wormholes. Fixed an issue where the behavior of the strike-through line in the cell item window was inconsistent. Fixed an issue where the font size option became unavailable in the corporation window. Fixed an issue where the back button in the show info window would fail if the previous item was a Stargate from another system. Rapidly clicking the take control button in an Upwell structure will no longer show multiple pilots in control windows showing your character. Searching for Territorial Claim Unit or Infrastructure Hub in the Sovereignty tab of the Corporation window now correctly filters for the respective structure type. Selecting a skill training tooltip will now only add the skills required to train that skill and ignore any missing nested requirements. Fixed an issue where simulated fittings would not always appear correctly when swapping between ships and structure fittings. Hovering over a link now only highlights the current instance of the link, rather than also highlighting any duplicate links in the same text box. Added minimize and close options when right-clicking the agency window header and neocom item. Fixed the alignment of some items in the icons in the corporation window. Fixed an issue where the radial menu would remain visible if active when opening the settings window. Fixed an issue where the systems without active incursions sometimes appeared in the agency window incursion results. Fixed an issue where pointer window highlights would appear over other windows. Fixed an issue where the pointer window highlight for the overview would not adjust when the window is resized. Removed the ability to add decimal places to contract number fields, as contracts only work with whole ISK amounts. Fixed an issue where the loading circle for sites in the agency window would linger if no sites were available. Fixed issue that caused different order of command for normal and Upwell Stargates. Fixed issue where the neocom may be displayed too brightly after login. Fixed an issue where expanded cargo hold modules would not be considered when loading items for multi-fit. The simulation fitting window is now correctly refreshed when a subsystem is fit if the hull restrictions filter is active. Fixed an issue where the simulate fit option in the information window of the active ship could fail under some circumstances. Whew, can't believe I managed to do that in one take. But that does mark the end of the patch notes for this release. As always, I hope you found this both entertaining and informative, and I hope to see you guys again in 2 more weeks. Until then, take care of yourselves and fly smart.